Yo, what it is, YouTube? It's your boy Nitsa coming back with another bullseye of a tutorial here today. I wanted to talk about the highly coveted and legendary Pultec series coming from Universal Audio Spark. So what we have right here is the Pultecs, and we have to understand that the Pultec was one of the very first EQs coming out in about the year 1950. You know, prior to this, a lot of the music and a lot of the times that, you know, when they were recording, they had to depend on microphone placement. So they didn't really have much in regards to EQ, and the Pultec is very interesting because it was one of the first EQs, right? And it actually allowed them to go in there and make some very broad, but also very close and very narrow moves as well. Overall, the Pultec is very known to be very musical. It helps give those very deep lows and those very sparkly, highs, and that's just due to the topology, tubes and transformers, right? So those two components are very important to understand about what gives it its legendary sound. So when you have UAD Spark, or even I believe with the regular basic analog classics bundle from Universal Audio, you get these three series, which is the filters right here. And let's understand with the filters that they're passive, you know. They actually, the literal hardware unit in real life doesn't even need to be powered, you know, it just comes like that. And that's why you kind of don't see the light right here. So that's very clever what they did. And then you also have the MEQ5, which lets you kind of dial into the mid-range. So this one is very simple. The filters, low cut, high cut, and you know, you have this which lets you kind of like, do a dip in the mid-range. Then lastly, you have the most popular one, which is the EQP-1A. So let's go ahead and jump into this video today and kind of just see how, you know, we can use this to actually spice up vocals and give it some life. I love to use the EQP-1A in a couple of different ways, and let's look at that right away.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. With my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost two niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really cause it came from nothing. All they know is that they see a art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is rock.
Alright, so that's the source material that we're going to be working with here today, and I just love the sound. We got to understand that these three are like brothers and sisters, right? Then you actually have these three right here, which are like another brothers and sisters, right? Another set, right? They're all inside of the same family. Then right here, these are more related, right? So like kind of like I look at this whole thing like a family, but they're all kind of like cousins. So these are more closely related as they all go together, the low end, you know, and then the top right here, these all three go together. So you know, it was actually one of the very first parametric EQs in the sense that it actually let people, you know, adjust the Q. You know, the sharpest one would be right here and the broadest one would be right here. And I love to, you know, go in there and dial in a vocal sound. So let's look into this a little bit further. You know, this actual attenuation shelf right here is controlled through these two knobs. You can, you know, technically kind of like boost the 5K hertz and also attenuate it as well, but it doesn't directly do it. It does it in a very way where I would explain it as the ballpark. You know, when you're boosting 100 cycles, it doesn't directly boost it, but kind of like the whole region. You know, it's not directly the bomb, but the blast radius itself, right? So let's look at how we can get a good sound, you know, with this, Pultec right here. And what I love to do too is I kind of like to leave a little bit of space when I'm using it on Studio Rack on vocals specifically, because I love to give myself the, you know, opportunity to switch out the filters and switch out the ordering. So that's something that I do a lot with plugins, but let's actually start going in there and dialing an actual vocal sound.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. With my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated.
So it's very beautiful in the sense that the actual topology is making me feel like we got a little bit more beef, you know, adding that harmonic content using the tubes to the low end, but then we still have these very musical filters. So first thing that we went in there is we just did a little filter, not necessarily to even take out the mud, but just to position the vocal in the mix. And let's go ahead and play around with our high cut. Something I love to do too is I actually like to go in there and like literally automate this during the song. So I didn't do it on this song specifically, but I love to like actually automate this button.
I just wanna put my problem problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is the SC or art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing.
All right, so in this situation, I'm only going to use the low cut because that's what sounds best to me. But I would even use this high cut on even ad-libs. You know, it kind of has like it has the same function as any filter, but it's just the fact that the way the saturation is, it has this like kind of this little magic graininess to it, and that's why people love it. So next thing I would probably do is I'd go ahead and pay attention to the mid range. The mid range is the absolute life force of, you know, a vocal sound. So that's why when I'm on the Pultec, I always I'm very delicate with my mid range. It lets you kind of go in there and peak and dip, so it's very good. And the way that, you know, these filters also kind of like overlap in a sense, you know, slightly. You know, you can also go all the way to 2000, but then, you know, pretty much with the Pultec, the most important thing is you get to go in there and kind of like shape your own sound, you know. And let's look at how it can affect the mid-range.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is the SC or art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing fraud, forever thuggin', yeah. I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is the SC or art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing fraud, forever thuggin', yeah. I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated.
So the beautiful thing about the Pultec, what I like to do is I like to definitely always go in there and boost and kind of hear like what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And I kind of picked this 300 right here. It kind of sounded the best to me. Kind of like the low register is kind of giving me a little bit of proximity. I want my vocal to come a little bit forward. And, you know, I kind of I boosted and I cut at the same frequency. So that's the amazing thing about the Pultec that I'm trying to get across to you guys, is that you can boost and cut the same frequency, but it's not directly, it's not precise. It's more of a broad kind of overall thing that helps you kind of just shape like the tonal characteristics that you want to get out of the vocal, right? And I don't think I'm going to use this peak band, but let's hear if potentially anything inside of this mid-range, which is going up to 1 to 5K, that's more like the actual presence. But the lower register, that's more like the feeling, the boominess, right? And I like my vocals to be big and thick and lush. You know, I don't like skinny vocals. You know, people always try to say to roll off a lot of bottom, but you need to understand that that can kind of hurt the human connection, right? Because when you're talking to somebody in real life, you know that you hear the full frequency spectrum, which is the lows and the highs and everything. And, you know, it's not very natural when you're coming into a mixing situation where you're just being very aggressive with the lows. Sometimes you do have to do that, but for the most part, I'm always trying to think about the human connection. Like, how do I make this vocal speak to not only me, but the listener as well? And that's why I like the Pultec a lot on vocals, because it gives us that texture, that real life feeling of kind of like having a conversation that the artist is speaking to you directly rather than it just being a song.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause they came from nothing.
So I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just making very small, subtle moves. But even with the Pultec, even if you want to do push it very hard, that's kind of where I do my big work is over here on the EQP-1A. Usually when it comes to the filter, I'm doing some general moves, some tweaks here and there. But when it comes to the actual EQP-1A, that's kind of where I like to get very aggressive because it's the broadest out of all of them.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn, bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hate it. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin', really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is that see a art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing fraud, forever thuggin', yeah. Why do things gotta change? I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn, bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hate it. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin', really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is that see a art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing. I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn, bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hate it. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin', really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is that see a art. I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn, bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hate it. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin', really.
So as you can definitely hear, the Pultec, it just makes it sound like more like a song. Before, it sounded like a digital recording that was kind of like sitting on top of the beat. But it's just the way that we were just doing adjustments to the mid-range. Generally, I'd like to do 60 cycles. But my main thing right here is what I'm trying to talk about is like rearranging the plugins that, the different orders that I get is kind of like affecting the frequencies, right? And it's kind of affecting the distance and everything like that. Before, the vocals sounded very boomy and like it sounded like it was on top of the beat. But as I was, doing all of those little mid-range tweaks here and there, boosting and cutting, right? It just did a very musical thing where it made the music just sit back a little bit more, actually become a part of the song. So let's listen to it one more time.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn, bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hate it. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he saucing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the cell, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin', really, cause they came from nothing. All they know is that see a art, they gon' start bustin'.
So you guys can hear the difference right there. It sounds like there's a sheen. It sounds like there's more presence. The vocal is literally establishing itself in the song. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys is this parallel compression trick. This is a great trick, that could be a great alternative to, boosting EQ right at the top, right? If you want some of that sparkly mainstream vocal. So here's the, kind of chain that we have right here. And pay attention, like when I do this EQ, like this Pultec, I actually kind of like to use it in a channel strip fashion. I don't necessarily like to, always use it by itself, specifically when I'm just doing vocals. If it was like a different instrument, I might only use the EQP-1A, but I have this bus right here, right? So I'm kind of, what I'm doing is I'm rolling off the lows. Then I'm doing a broad kind of boost on the top, right? And then I'm going into an LA2A with more high frequency emphasis. So we got to understand that it's still doing compression for the whole signal, but it's just pretty much the LA2A is on a type of timing where it's like, okay, I'm only going to compress the very tippity top, right? And that's the only thing that's going to trigger me, but it's still going to compress everything, right? And then lastly, we're going to go ahead and, compensate for that cut we did in the lows and the highs pretty much like. So I'm gonna just show you guys how this sounds like, but let's listen to how like this specifically helps the vocal give some more brightness and cut through a very dense mix, like kind of what we have here.
I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he sizing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause it came from nothing. All they know is that they see a art, they gon' start bustin'. All they know is robbing, doing fraud forever. I just wanna put my problem to the ceiling. Stay for everyone and then fuck all they feeling. Where my money at with bills, tell her that I got it. Pull up in a brand new Benz, difference is I bought it. Niggas say I'm overrated, overestimated. Damn bro, if I make it, I'ma laugh at everyone who hated. Remember getting faded, then I remember all them times I faded. Why he sizing me, ain't no sorry, that not tolerated. I was in the set, I lost 2 niggas and my cousin. My little dog be wildin' really, cause it came from nothing. All they know is that they see a art, they gon'
So that's the beauty about the Pultec. It adds so much brightness, so much warmth, so much of everything that we love in a very musical way that's not too precise. Sometimes you have modern EQs that are just a little bit too precise. That's great for a certain time, but whenever you just want to kind of lift the blanket off of a vocal, I think the Pultec and the UAD Spark version is one of the best emulations out there. So this is all of my tips and tricks that I have for today for this UAD Spark. Just want to say thanks a lot for being a great part of my YouTube family. Appreciate you guys now. Peace.